Good morning from Moscow. It's Tuesday, the 18th of August. Now, I didn't have time yesterday to post my press review, so this one is a mixture of articles from today and yesterday. In a moment, Russia's disappointment 1 year on from Alaska. First, fuel shortages in Russia are back in the news here, although on Monday, only Nezavisima Gazeta led on them. The second wave of the fuel crisis is building. Russian regions are reintroducing the odd-even system and limits on the sale of petrol. The odd-even system means that if your car's number plate ends in an odd number, then in some regions you're only allowed to fill your petrol tank on odd-numbered days of the week. And if it ends in an even number, then on even-numbered days of the week. The government admits that in a number of Russian regions there is still a tense situation with the fuel supply to petrol stations. I can confirm that includes Moscow. This was my local petrol station this morning on my way to work. I've seen long queues here now for at least 4 days. And today, Rossiyska Gazeta, the Russian government paper, is reporting that in some regions there are problems with the supply of petrol at petrol stations. The paper writes that diesel is not affected. The shutting down of oil refineries due to damage by drones has had a critical impact specifically on the supply of petrol. It clearly isn't sufficient. Although the government paper claims that we're not talking about a Russia-wide fuel crisis, but local shortages in concrete regions. And the fuel shortage is top story in today's Izvestia newspaper. The paper publishes these figures. As of the 16th of August, across Russia, 28.1% of petrol stations had fuel. A week before, it was 41%. Back to yesterday's Nezavisima Gazeta, which warns deepening stagnation expected in Russian industry in the second half of the year. Interesting choice of words. I wonder at what point deepening stagnation becomes recession. Monday's Moskovsky Komsomolets reported that in Russia chicken and beef are getting more expensive. Since the start of the year, the price of beef in the shops has risen by 9.8%, chicken by 10.1%. In Russia, there is a boom in second-hand goods. That is because for many people, new items have become too expensive, old ones are the only option, increasingly a lifeline for an empty wallet. Mind you, from Monday's edition of the Russian government paper Rossiyska Gazeta, you might have thought the Russian economy was doing wonderfully well. What did we learn? On an average salary, you can now buy almost 25% more fillet of fish than 3 years ago. Also, the nut market in Russia is steadily growing. And in Russia, sales of luxury cars are going up. One thing in Russia, of which there is less and less, is confidence that Donald Trump will help end the war in Ukraine on Russia's terms. 1 year on from the Trump-Putin-Alaska summit, the headline in Moskovsky Komsomolets on Monday was "The Stale Spirit of Anchorage." From overuse, this unfortunate spirit is so worn out that no one remembers what it meant when it first appeared. Just to point out, it was only Russian officials after the summit who spoke lyrically about some kind of spirit of Anchorage, as if Putin and Trump at that meeting had reached an understanding that Kiev would be pressured into accepting a peace deal that would suit Moscow. Not much of that spirit in evidence here. The writer claims that the main beneficiary of the Russian-Ukraine war is now Trump's America, because among other things, the war is weakening Russia. And note, this pro-Kremlin paper is openly using the word war now. The writer ends by saying, the biggest mystery of Anchorage is not why its spirit evaporated, but how it could appear in the first place. In Kommersant, one foreign policy writer tries to look for positives. The fallout from Alaska also demonstrated that America is not all-powerful. Trump couldn't get what he wanted from Europe and Ukraine. In this particular case, it worked against Moscow. But the very fact of Washington's limited capabilities should be considered a positive. Finally, to the joke section of Komsomolskaya Pravda, and some advice perhaps on how best to behave right now in Russia. If speaking the truth is dangerous and lying is shameful, all that's left is to joke.